Hey everybody, it's Rockula, and welcome back to Rockula Retrospective. It is Friday, November 7th, 2014, and it is time for my weekend re-review of The Walking Dead, and that's going to be for Season 5, Episode 4, called Slabtown. Now, as many of you who are faithful Rockula Retrospective watchers know, right here is my initial reaction review that I post on Sunday night. And then right here is the full review that I end up posting on Monday night. And this is going to be the weekend re-review where I take all of those ideas that I presented on those two, and then I wrap up everything. I do some research, and then I also check and see what other reviewers are doing on the internet. So I would have done this earlier, but Thursday I was fixing my brakes and I was compressing the brake cylinders, and they cracked and started hemorrhaging brake fluid. So up until about 5 o'clock today, I've been busting my ass working on my brakes, so I'm exhausted, but I gotta do a show for the people. So here we go. With this episode, one of the first things is I always seem to find people that look like somebody else on this show. Obviously, you got Abraham, who looks like Seamus. You've got Dr. Eugene Porter, who looks like Bill Hicks. And then you got this new Dr. Edwards. I think he looks like Seth Rogen. So there's another look-alike. And I was talking about how I was born in Piedmont Hospital, and I was hoping that they were going to be in Piedmont Hospital, but it looks like they are in Grady Memorial Hospital, which is a real hospital in Atlanta, and that establishes yet another marker on the map that says they're still in the Atlanta area. And, I saw on Google Maps that they have a picture of the Walking Dead location shoots, but I wonder out there if anybody has this answer. Is there a map that shows in the storyline where everybody has gone? That would be a very interesting map to look at to see where they are, but they're still in the general Atlanta area and the surrounding area. And the funny thing about this episode is there's still a collective groan about Beth and her singing. Everybody, as soon as they heard Beth say, "Oh, I sing," it's like everybody jumps on that and they all hate Beth singing. But another concept that everybody agrees on is that the hospital is implementing a form of indentured servitude. And everybody seems to quote different types of indentured servitude, which is kind of interesting because, once again, this has universal appeal and it goes across all cultural boundaries. We got like examples of indentured servitude was like in Japan and China and so forth. You had farmers who had to actually rent their tools from the landowner, and it cost more than what they would make off of the farming. And incidentally, a lot of martial arts weapons are made out of farm implements. Then you have work camps where the accommodations and the food they cost more than the labor that you actually produce for them, which is the closest to what's going on here. And also it manifests itself in stuff like prostitution rings, where you have people that are so heavily addicted to whatever drug they're into that they end up prostituting themselves just for a fix, and they never get out of it because they're always going to be wanting some more drugs. So those are all of the ways that people are relating to the whole concept of indentured servitude. Now here's a concept that I'm still wondering about, and that is Dr. Edwards. Could he be experimenting on walkers? I brought this up in the review, but there's two things that kind of lead me in that direction. And one is when Beth is in Dr. Edwards' office for the first time, he talks about research, and I wonder if he's like researching on how to combat this disease. It could be a red herring where they're just, my mind is going off into that area because, like I said before, we always find these people that think that they can either cure it or turn people. And the second thing that he did is he went down into the basement and said these walkers are the reason why I'm here. So the obvious thing could be that he knows that he'd never survive against the walkers that he's looking at through the grate. But, maybe in, my heart of hearts, he is experimenting on walkers, because that would be a really interesting twist. I brought up the power issue, and I think Behind the Mask brought up that there was a lot of car batteries around. And another moment that I want to address here is that when Dawn came in after getting bit, when Joan came in after getting bit, she told Dawn that you'll never control them, and Dawn said, I will control them. And I'm wondering, at first I thought, is there some kind of experiment where they're trying to control walkers, which is, where my brain goes. Two, the most obvious thing is Joan is talking about the cops that are working for Dawn. And this comes to the next point where everybody was pondering, how does Dawn keep control over the cops? And we had the backstory where Dawn and her, I don't know if it was her partner, and I forgot his name, I'm sorry. Her partner, Hanson, that's what it is. It could have been her partner, or it could have been her superior, but Dr. Edwards explains to Beth on the roof that Hanson was talking to the higher-ups and started executing people, and Dawn took care of Hanson. So that tells me that there's some higher-up chain of command that Dawn still believes is out there. And that's how she's keeping the other cops in line, because I think that when it comes to chain of command, it was Hanson, Dawn, and then all the other cops like Officer Rapey. So Officer Rapey is starting to get into his idea that nobody's going to come get us, and as soon as Dawn slips up, he's going to kind of usurp the chain of command. But obviously we saw with this episode, Officer Rapey ain't going to do nothing. So, I think that that's what Dawn is doing, is that she's holding out thinking that people are going to come rescue them, and that's what keeps the other officers in line. And by the way, people are talking about them being cops, but it seems like the kind of techniques that they're using, they're more like prison guards than cops. I wouldn't be surprised if they were maybe prison guards, but they sure as hell are acting like prison guards. Next, we come to the idea of Clozapine versus Clozapine, or however you say those two. And it's just something that, I don't know, maybe it's because my mom is a nurse and I pay attention to this kind of stuff, but no health professional would keep Clozapine and Clozapine right next to each other. We all know that Dr. Edwards tricked Beth into giving, what was his name? Dr. Trevitt, the wrong drug, but I actually did a little bit of a research onto it. Clonazepam. Clonazepam is used to treat seizures and panic disorders, and Clozapine is an antipsychotic which actually causes seizures. So my whole thing is, no real health professional would put those two together, because there's way too much of a danger of them being confused with each other. And obviously, everybody knows that Dr. Edwards used that to trick Beth into killing Dr. Trevitt, but even more obvious is the fact that no health professional would put those two together. All right, so here comes the part where we review the reviewers and we answer one more question that I had. First of all, I want to talk about some of the people that I watched that we pretty much all had the same ideas and didn't really disagree with each other. Watched Shannon Toomey of Girlstock last week, and I really liked her personality, so watched her again, and she put out another cool episode. Two Dead Girls, we agreed on pretty much everything, and I even got to do a guest spot on their show. So hi to the Goyles, and I'm looking forward to seeing your review next week. And here comes the question that I asked on my full review, and that was, whose ID did Beth find in the file cabinet while she found Joan and then almost got raped by Officer Rapey. And it was Rawrist, Rawrist. I really like your reviews too, and you answered my question that was Dr. Trevitt's ID, and that's how Beth put 2 and 2 together and got the dirt on Dr. Edwards. So I went through a ton of reviewers, and once again, please don't think that I'm hating, but I literally went through about 20-30 reviewers that I caught who posted the very first night just after the show. And a lot of them were, like I said, just people sitting in front of their webcams and recapping the show, which is great. I think it's great that everybody's doing that, but it's not a lot of personality there. And then we have the real professional shows where it is, they have something like 2,000 hits an hour after they post. And there's nothing wrong with those shows either. But so out of those two categories, I really liked this kid, Kevin Falk. He didn't have a lot of production value, but what he did, he made up for it in enthusiasm and eloquence. So I liked Kevin Falk's review. And there is also AfterBuzz TV. They put on a real professional show, and they've got monitors with the Walking Dead logo all over it, and it's a really well put together show, but it's not just a dry recap. It is actually very well driven by people with personalities. So I like AfterBuzz TV as well. And now we come to the prediction part of this episode, where obviously if you've watched the show more than once by now, or even once, you've realized that Noah escapes, gets to Daryl and Carol, tells them all the skinny on, how to infiltrate. He sees Carol can look weak, so Carol, you infiltrate. Daryl, here's the amount of people you're going to have to defend against. Carol goes in and infiltrates. Daryl and Noah go back to Rick's group, get reinforcements, and come back. So that's not much of a prediction because everybody's figured that out. But I'm stealing a prediction from my friend Meat Pie. So I'm taking credit for the prediction, even though Meat Pie brought this up. And that is, Noah was talking about how he and his father came to Atlanta to find his uncle. And Rockstradamus predicts Noah's uncle, Morgan Jones. That's right. When Morgan Jones catches up with our group, he's going to find out that Noah's with him and they're going to have a reunion. So that's the prediction for the future. Now, obviously, it's a Seamus episode, so there's not a lot of predictions to make for that. But all right, what we're going to do then is I hope that you can come back Sunday night and watch my reaction review episode. And as usual, comment, like, and subscribe. Let me know if you have any ideas that I haven't covered or things that I haven't figured out yet. And I'll start giving you props on the other review shows. And oh yeah, thanks again to Olivella for writing in again. We didn't really differ on anything, but that's my new regular contributor. So looking forward to seeing you contribute to my next week's episodes. I'm Rockula, and this is Rockula Retrospective.